hiding Black Lives Matter did not matter? Hiding Black lives did not matter while faking atomic implosions with new math did? When? So your life today, knowing you can no longer say it has always been this way, we're going to move forward with a little bit of what I learned. I like to share, they call it teaching. Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood Was Armageddon. The Mud Flood was the Armageddon, like Marcella knows, and she won't let you tell her anything else. Why would she? She's ready to debate you anytime, anywhere. That's a new intro. Oh, Marcella, wait till we see. We got some good things here today. The Black Lives Matter things, it's coming up because history class just touched on the Mormons, and because we live close to Utah, and my PhD lapsed Catholic professor, really a scholar, is married into a family of Mormons. He's easy on them, and he's almost like they were against slavery. They were almost the good guys, and he does call him the prophet Joseph Smith. How recent was, or how recently has it been since Black lives have mattered? I know they do now. Everybody will just tell you they matter. But I don't think it's been that long. So let's share, let's discover, let's see if, hey, all life ended but in Hiroshima. This is supposed to be a secret. Where was the thing? Man, if I don't find the thing, I'll be running late. Oh no, I can't find the thing. Where was it last time? Here it is. The fair use thing. Now I can do almost anything on YouTube except share bad information. As long as we're here. I don't know if we'll go over them all, but we're going to just hit a few of the pictures. Here's what people are worried about. I know I'm not worried about it, but I know I'm not thrilled about it. Because I know that they can't keep giving away $1 trillion every time we have a pandemic, if all these other countries are holding all these assets, debt. Somehow it's debt. I don't even know what these. Here's another one. So in 2025, 9.2 trillion, that is a lot of US debt, will either mature or need to be refinanced. Look, if you know, the last time I was hanging out with the US debt, it was not mature. It was not mature at all. Marcella, it kept putting its finger right in front of my face going, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. It was very immature. That was supposed to be a joke because I'm showing pictures and trying to joke it up a little bit. What's this guy yakking about? Oh, I wanted to figure out, refresh my mind with their Copernicus thing. And at the end of the video, you can see it's mostly red. It's mostly red. He's going, but one thing we know for 100% sure is that the geocentric, the Bible explanation is wrong. That's all he really knows. That's what this show was about. Because they've sent telescopes and probes and people up there. Doggone it, we've seen it for ourselves. Have you, or have you seen a picture of somebody else took it for you? There it is. Now, if he assumed they were ellipses, the math fit the motion of the planets, the sun, and the moon. And if you only imagine there's 97% dark matter in the universe, you can make atomic fission work because you have to cheat on the math and apply constants where there are not any. I just, look how amazed he is when he said, you probably don't feel it, but you're spinning at 107,000 kilometers an hour while you're rotating. I'm there like, I should turn on the closed captions, right? Too late. Frederick Barbarossa, not the Barbarossa I went, he was the Holy Roman Emperor of the Nazi First Reich, not the Second Reich. Marvel of the world. In his declining years, he showed a desire to return to paganism. Okay. The cross must be removed from the altar because it is no longer a sign of suffering and humility. That's what he said. As the Nazis survey history, the First Reich was followed by centuries of darkness in which white people fought white people in wars of religion. That's what he's saying. That's what they're tired of. They're just tired of white people fighting white people. I don't even believe there was an atomic bomb. I believe there could be radiation. There is some dangerous things you can mix with chemicals. But on August 8th, the War Department denied published report. 1 second. Wow. I feel like I got a piece of popcorn stuck on the left side of my throat. I guess that thing shows up. If 84% is not enough, let me know. So the United Nations Charter got signed on that same day when they faked these. This is when they announced to the world a couple of days ago, we dropped a radioactive bomb and we're ending the war. It destroyed the whole city. But we deny that the bomb emits lethal rays indefinitely. Tokyo was devastation so great, extent not ascertained, Tokyo says, because Tokyo had been bombed into submission with fire bombs. So day after, August 6th, now it's practically guaranteed the war is going to end early, but it's only happened because of one thing. Russia declared war on Japan. Wow, what day did that hit the news? August 8th. Well, I think they had been attacking since the 6th. Truman announces Soviet Union's entry. Oh, because they couldn't fight Japan until a month after the Nazis had surrendered. All life in Hiroshima ended by an atomic implosion bomb. They're going to make it explode. What in the world? Come on. I mean, if you don't want to believe it anymore and think that it's always been this way, these were, eugenics, rubbing people's heads, white people, including Japan and China, arguing about who's white enough to rule anybody of color, and they did it. Faking Christianity, we can trace that. building a tunnel or cleaning it out? Has things always been like that? Building this tunnel or cleaning it out? Hiring people clean out this tunnel. 1903 to 1915, what happened? Resets within this short season have been postulated. Am I out of fresh pictures? Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to the African races? It's a Mormon doctrine. Some of those Mormons, the guys that they said it was okay, and this is from 1965. RJ was pushing 10 years old. He was going to be 10 soon. I was all like 8 years old. I just knew what was going on. I couldn't wait for the next episode of Leave It to Beaver. Maybe that got canceled by then. We finished that quote. I'll start over again. Shall I tell you the law of God in regard to black people? That's what he's saying, because we know that they're from, they're everywhere. The United States was Egypt. If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed, mixes his blood with the N word, let's just say it what they mean. That's what they called it. That's how they talked. That's how my relatives talked in Missouri until the 70s, and I'm sure much after, but that's what I clicked on. The penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. If any white person has sex and that girl gets pregnant by a black person, the penalty for Mormons in 1965 was instant and sudden death. At least that's the quote from Brigham Young Journal of Discourses, Volume 10, page 110. The reader should be reminded that Brigham Young, the second prophet of the Mormon Church, said that whatever he preached was as good as Scripture. Oh, this book is from probably the 1965. I don't know. Well, this one says it. So we know that Brigham Young was not alive in 1965. I don't think he made it to 1890, but I don't know. The church went to court on several occasions to block Negroes from moving into San Francisco neighborhood in which the headquarters was located. Look, we've got a church here, and we want to. There's black people moving in. Could you please stop that? October 28th, 1865, Mormon Church, the Millennial Star, printed an article that stated Mormonism is that kind of religion, the entire divinity of which is invalidated and its truth utterly rejected the moment that any one of its leading principles I acknowledged to be false. The Mormon writer John Stewart said, if we as members of the church are going to pick and choose among the prophet's teachings and say this one is of God, we can accept it, but this one is of man, we will reject that, then we are undermining the whole structure of our faith. Mormonism and the Negro, page 19. Townships and sections. I just wanted to remind you, why is 16 off? What is this? Why is it highlighted? Because you can't build anything. This is for schools, education, public use. Each section is 1 square mile. But when you do a city and you break it down, number 16 is always public. That's a big thing. These electric and trolleys, they just stopped. They were using them in some places in 1937, but then Standard Oil, the war, this is a big deal. Something about these electric trolleys and then the electric cars, and then they faked it. But again, it was number 33, and I just thought, well, there's a 33. I was looking at this date, trying to decide, what's that word? December 2nd, because, that, and the closer you get, it does look like this 8 It's kind of filled in like the same color as the one. I don't know. But besides that, I mean, their spelling is all the same we use today and have, don't make sense. Oh, they're building the Capitol. I couldn't get this guy was talking about Waco and how, a guy just retired that was recounting how he survived a vicious gunfight before he forgot that nobody ever really, we didn't really return fire. They shot at us, but then they burned him down to save the kids. Same old story. I've been dealing with this since it happened, the early 90s, as a part of my wake up call. Found out that Mr. Richardson, a black, I think DEI recipient of the presidential rank for meritorious executive service for his role. I think he was probably a black Freemason. And they called that 1993 Branch Davidian massacre a hostile action, and he got a medal. A bunch of people did probably. Like when they gave 20 of the highest Medal of Honor to people at Wounded Knee who shot unarmed Native Americans. Taught them a lesson. That was the revenge of the 7th Cavalry, Custer's old people. 20 medals of honor. Yes, the Ute Treaty of 1868 was broken after Grand Junction was connected to the railroad. The treaty promised the Utes the western third of Colorado for their absolute and undisturbed use and occupation. Well, that lasted until the railroad got there. But the arrival of the settlers and miners after the railroad attached, especially after the Bruneau Agreement of 1873, violated this promise. The Utes were ultimately murdered, poisoned, and dispensed. And the Mormons had a big hand in that. So I've been studying the bear dance. Came up in my history class. I think it's a 305 American History of the West. Ure-Ute dance of 1929, because the spring bear dance, sun dance are mentioned, Unita Ute, and the history that we study is basically all about the Lakota. Like they were ghost dance experts. I doubt it at all, not with the fake Sitting Bull, sellout Sitting Bull, being a part of their ghost dance. Something about evacuations and vaccines, I'm probably sure. Water supplies have been a problem. Time stamp codes. So I think I've shown this, right? This is the Wall Street of Wall Street. Oh, that's new. I didn't get to show that. We've seen the Starport. We know that that's on the edge of New Amsterdam. And so obviously the Native Americans saw it. If you believe things haven't always been like they tell us in the reset and Little Caesars and stuff. But did you know that the Wall Street was a Starport, baby? So now we are back into the things I did the other day. This helicopter crash is a mystery, huh? The tunnels are falling apart. And they are coming to take you away. Hola, Gerard and Donald. So good to see you. Let's see what.
Who will tread down.
Okay, that was just my personal listening. I wanted to look up this Laban in the Book of Mormon. Laban and Lehi. Laban, Lehi, First Nephi. They're trying to compare what they do. They're just get our feet wet with this stuff, right? This is what some of the things Mormons believe. They've got their own little, well, if Abraham can do it, this guy can do it too. And what I found is that Wikipedia is pro-Mormon. Let me prove that in a second. I think I'm getting rid of it. I think that popcorn seed is slowly dissolving, and I'm not so anxious about losing my. Not to be confused with Layman and Lemmy. First book of Nephi. Don't think I have any interest in that. He only makes a brief. He has brass plates. Somehow, Laban appears as a wealthy, politically influential person who decapitates Laban. He then puts on Laban's clothing and armor and retrieves the plates. Not a lot of, documentation. Just straight from the Book of Mormon. They're just getting it right out of what Mormon says about the guy. Try to throw in some confusing stuff. James Strang, like Joseph Smith, claimed to translate scripture from metal plates. The resulting scripture, the book of the law of the Lord, claims to at least part of the Laban's plate. So anyway, Nephi's killing of Laban has been argued over by believers and others. What they consider a believer is somebody that accepts that Joseph Smith is a prophet and that it was a political act of self-defense when he stumbled upon him sleeping. He steals the family fortune. He discovers Laban laying drunk in the road because Nephi sneaks into Jerusalem. Directed by the Spirit of the Lord, he cuts off the drunk Laban's head. So in self-defense is what they said. It's legally justified self-defense by the Mormons because it was a political act specified specifically one of sovereignty and that it functioned according to the biblical story of Abraham and Isaac. That was the test of Isaac's faith. There was no murder involved. That's when the Lord said, I'll provide myself as the sacrifice. Okay, this story is just completely crazy. It's nuts. But to them, it's the established biblical canon because they don't have no problem when it says don't add to the book of this, they just did. And that's it. All Mormon, all the time. James Strang, again, now Wikipedia starts to go in everything. I'll show you just a couple. Warning, that they won't do it for Isaac because that's not Mormon. Slowly he rolls the thing back up. So half black people and early Mormonism. This multiple issues contains original research, text from within a religion. So they're using the Mormon religion to explain this. Possibly contains a synthesis, some way to make it seem like, oh, that works. Okay, they're not being neutral. There's no verifiable, what in the world? This is all, so half of them get the warning of this isn't fair. James Strang, American religious leader, self-proclaimed monarch. Wow, you know what a monarch is? It's the head of the state. Got elected in 1853. If you just were casually looking at that, and like I just stumbled on it, for a second there, I'm there like, wow, I'm looking in a mirror. And I look younger. So he said he had been appointed this, so he's a breakaway fraction of the, come on, man. These guys just wanted to break away and stay with the polygamy. It's going to come down to that and their hatred of black people. They hated it. So anyway, he got his own little prophecy, and I'm going to guess he started his own little, formerly known as Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day saints, the term strangeite is usually added to the title to avoid confusing them with other Latter-day Saint bodies carrying this or similar names. Brighamites, Strangeites, Josephites, Rigdonites, all people wanting to say in some way, we don't like black people and we're really into polygamy. And if I get these comments like, well, Abraham had many wives, and so did Moses, so did David, everybody had many wives. Christians should be able to have many wives. You know what? You're not getting it. I doubt your salvation. You don't understand what's written on your heart. You don't understand the higher calling that we have now since that blessing has been given to the adopted ones. Having the word written on our heart. The binding of Isaac was an example of the ultimate sacrifice, the only spirit God. And I think this lesson was more for angels who are spirits when he told them, all of you are going to worship one of these humans, one of these in the flesh things. They didn't know that he was going to be the perfect sacrifice when he said, I will provide myself. And if that's not written on your heart, good luck believing it. You're going to be, I don't get it, I don't see it, I don't hear it. It makes zero sense. Some of you will hear it for a while and then fall away. Nothing you can do about that. Just happens, I guess. But this is not anything to do with Mormonism. It shouldn't even, if it comes up, I'm going to be, I guess I won't be that surprised. So far, it's not anything in the Mormon stuff. It's in some sort of alleged Muslim stuff. Nope, nothing about the Mormons in that one. So Latter-day Saint movement. Well, this is their portal. I just think it seems way too friendly, Introduction, restorationists, priesthood authority. I think they have, too much. This article is about priesthood, okay. Priesthood denotes elements of both power and authority. The priesthood is referred to as the Melchizedek priesthood, being the high priest to whom Abraham paid tithes. Okay, is that all he was? Let's keep rolling. There's a lot of things that is going to have to tie together here. So, again, excessively closely related with the subject. They're going to say, had a range of doctrines related to race with regards to black people of African descent. What about the ones that were Native Americans? What about black people from other places? Certainly, you don't say that all black people are from Africa because that sounds very evolutionary. From the beginning, black people have been members of Mormon congregations. That's very debatable. And if you want to, owning a slave and having him be considered a member is not the same thing. They can list two people, Well, it's such a long article. I forgot that I'd have to swing down where it just basically is trying to prop up notable black members. There's Elijah and Greenflake. Oh, there's three. But, Young told the Quorum of 12 at winter quarters that if they were far away from the Gentiles, they would all be killed. When they mingle, seed is to death to all. So, you can have something with something over your head, but you know, he did free this person, when he died, I think. So that's good. Let's see here what this says. His plan called for the government to buy the freedom of enslaved persons, use the money from the sale of public lands. My cogitations, like Daniel's, have for a long time troubled me. When I viewed the condition of men throughout the world, and more especially in this boasted realm where the Declaration of Independence holds these truths to be self evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, inalienable might have been, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But at the same time, 2 or 3 millions of people are held slaves for life because the spirit in them is covered with a darker skin of our own. You see, their history teaches that because of some sin in the previous spirit world, of which these same spirits are now being incarnated into the world, if you were bad before, you'll be black. But if you were good, then they will put them on, put them in a black family. Let's see what we got here. Okay, we're going to switch gears now to just a little bit of how many underground recent from the 60s, 50s, they were used and then forgotten. Just a couple of minutes of this.
These high-platform rapid transit cars were affectionately known as Bluebirds because of their paint scheme. They were used by the Greater Cleveland RTA, Cleveland
That's not money that's far away from what we have now.
Transit's successor until 1985. While these cars were never used on the Detroit Superior Bridge, they are an interesting piece of Cleveland rail history. Besides a few visible sections of railroad tracks and this Plymouth locomotive on display, there's not as much left from the streetcar era at the east end of the bridge. A lot of the remnants were removed during a major bridge renovation between 1995 and 1997 to extend the bridge's lifespan by another 50 years. This included the wooden railroad ties over the center arch span of the bridge. Since tours began in the late 1980s, interest in the streetcar level has been steadily growing. Within the past decade, there have been plans to permanently reopen it.
So we'll have to study all these things, but we know that there's been a lot of these reset things. Broadway. So here is that story of the Broadway map. Starfort, baby.
American Wickwasquek Trail. This makes it seem clear and definitive. But listen to how all of these experts I talked to reference this.
I'm not sure if that's true, but it could be.
There likely was a Lenape trail that went through there.
How's it going?
Good. How are you, Daniel?
Good. It's so good to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
This is Fran Leiden, who wrote a book about the origin of Broadway. It seems like a pretty straightforward answer. Broadway can be traced back to the native
Amsterdam. So that really just ran north of the Dutch fort up to the wall that was at Wall
That's
Street. It's just kind of a rural dirt road when it starts out, and it's wide.
So are we going to think that the Dutch built this Starfort? At the end of the Golden Age or something, and then this Wall Street was a Starfort, baby, and Broadway, the same thing. Broadway, that was a Native American trail.
It's broad. It's the Broadway. Like parallel to it is the Broad Street, which is kind of silly.
This is Karen Q, and she's a local historian and author.
I'm Karen Quinones, but everyone knows me as Karen Q or Mrs. Q. From
Mrs.
Broadway down
Q.
to the East River, you see all those streets kind of curve, because they're all curving down to the important docks that were down there. So they all curve into those docks.
Which hastened the development of Broadway's stores, right? Because Broadway is only a few blocks from the docks.
I had never realized this, that the location of the docks in Lower Manhattan is what led to the creation of the financial district today, making Broadway
really
the
a
epicenter
subway?
of trade in New York.
It was the central spine of commerce going back years, they would just
Money.
talk about it differently
I
than
think
other
the Native
streets. It's like the
Americans knew how to
mythology of
make
Broadway was
money.
there.
Post Road began veering back toward where Broadway would run. But we're not talking about the Bowery or about
But then somewhere along the line, we just went eugenics. Black lives didn't matter. So I wanted to look up that Wikwasik Trail. This is my straight up algorithm. I'm not going to do it now. The Broadway has played such a central role in recent events is fitting given the history of the street. It is perhaps the Native Americans' oldest thoroughfare, growing with the city from its days as a coarse settlement to a bustling hub on the eastern seaboard. And in fact, it may be older than the actual New Amsterdam settlement. Well, how about that? That's the name of the path that was described by the Dutch settlers when they got there. And they probably had the Wall Street also. I don't know if this is like this is the more familiar. Give my regards to Broadway. Is that it? Tell all the folks at 42nd Street. What'd they say about it at Wikipedia? Broadway ended at the town commons of the Wall Street. Part of Broadway is what is now Lower Manhattan, was initially known as Great George. I thought it was by George Street. East side up, okay. Domestic Manners of the Americans, Fanny wrote of her impressions of New York City in general and Broadway in particular. This noble street may vie with any I've ever seen for its length and breadth, its handsome shops, neat awnings, excellence trottoir, well-dressed pedestrians, so on and so forth, surrounded by grass and trees. And it was good for a while. You can take a look at it. So there's a horse. You knew that. You could see a horse. I thought that picture would get bigger. Is that a horse? Nope, cops. Well, you can tell there's horses on the street now. Got that blurry photo. Sometimes, with some photography back then, you had to be very still. Wonder if these were for electric cars. R. Smith is selling diamonds. Quite a pole. Liver button. I don't know. That doesn't sound yummy. I don't see any electric trains. That's going to the South Ferry would be my guess. There it is today. Everybody waiting for the New Year's celebration, right? So what do we, I mean, I think everything is, I'm all in. Bible reset, body parts, two creations, flat earth. It's all, they've lied about everything. We don't know what's going on underground in the major cities of the world. We got to quit acting like it. Black Lives Matter. Quit saying that. We've known that since 1964. Look, we barely scraped that whole what was happening in the war. I mean, they couldn't even, blacks and whites weren't allowed to play on the same baseball teams. One drop of blood would keep you from being a movie star. You'd have to be a what person who looks white in black movies. It was the law, not only in the United States, and they subjugated, made colonies out of anybody that was of color, because they were working for this short season. The nations are going to be classified by race in their world. Well, I wish I never would have gotten that Occupy Wall Street stuff. That was not a help for me. I was a sucker. So this is that New York City where all the money was. After the United States won the Revolutionary War, got our independence, when did this one didn't get any bigger? I don't think that New York, I don't think the Redcoats left New York for another 20 years or something like that, or till 1896. It's all kind of a weird history. So here is that World Telegram, and that's I was hoping I could get something, I wanted to read that story, but they shut me down, so I had to look for a bigger thing, a better thing. I got this whole article. This is the end when it finally got to the heroes of the First Reich. We got a whole breakdown from Bill Downs. I think he's related to those guys at Churchill Downs, and he was a reporter in those Walter Cronkite stuff. I think Bill Downs was one of the guys that covered in 1942. He's put all his memoirs out since 2011. I just found it, started looking at it, but he visited there after the German surrender. And I was interested in the German surrender because it triggered the Soviet Union to go attack China, attack Japan, who had occupied China for 12 years and been kicking their butt since the early 1900s. And then all of a sudden, Chiang Kai-shek got pushed onto the island of Taiwan, and that's where we stand today. We're shaking our heads going, how'd we won the war with atomic weapons, but the communists are in China? And look at now, they're mad about all this heroin we sold them 100 years ago, holding a grudge. Wasn't that interested in Barbarossa anyway, but I just thought my interest would grow when I thought, I thought it would be about that pirate we were studying at the Barbary Coast. This is another one from, way back when. Doggone that thing. And it rolls like that. It's just Middle Ages, two leading families in Germany, Swabia land in Antarctica. Or is it the Arctic? I don't know. I don't remember right now. So Frederick of Barbarossa, what do you got, dude? What do you look like? Really? Is this what you look like? Is this where you lived? Oh, he went to Damascus. Said, we got you now. He looked like they want you to think Jesus looked like. There's coins that proves it. He did it. Seems like they've written on the wall and on the thing. So you can see on the outside there is some writing. Latin on the walls, Latin on the Barbarossa chandelier. That's pretty, you don't believe in Star Forge? You think that it's all a joke? You think that Well, again, they didn't make it all out of masonry or megaliths. There's bricks there. Well, what did the Egyptians make the Hebrew slaves do? Make bricks? Yeah, they did it. What's that? That doesn't look like bones from a cathedral. Gotta keep rolling. So the Mormon Church, here are some of these quotes. If we as members of the church are going to pick and choose among the prophets, say, okay, I think we read that one, so I want to get back up here. According to Mormon history and authoritative Mormon teachings, the Negro, as they were referred to, are a cursed race because they were not faithful to God like the angels when they left their first estate. That's what I mean. This is all Freemason, Rosicrucian, anything but scripture. Now, their first is the pre-existent life with God. Hence, when they were born, they are born in black-skinned families. The early Mormon church was highly prejudicial against blacks, as opposed to everything they teach, probably in New Mexico, Arizona. Anything touching Utah seems to be way too sympathetic to this early church monstrosity. And though there has been a change in attitude to blacks as of June 1978, when they were allowed into the priesthood, of which you couldn't go to heaven unless you were part of it. It is, they say, up until this very recently, or even till today, a very segregated church, as are most churches. Here's a little bit more detail on it from Orson Hyde, very high elder, delivered at the high priest quorum in 1845. At the time, the devil was cast out of heaven. There were some spirits that did not know who had authority, whether God or the devil. They consequently did not take a very active part in either side, but rather thought the devil had been abused and considered he had rather the best claim to the government. These spirits were not considered bad enough to be cast down into hell and never have bodies. Neither were they considered worthy of an honorable body on earth. So if you're black, you're not honorable. The very fact that God let them have a body at all, even though they're black, should be evidence of his mercy. That's what the Mormons believe, and they would have you believe Mitt Romney should have been president of the United States. But he called Barack Obama weak on terror, and I believe Barack Obama is a homosexual who got butthurt and said, well, I'm going to prove I'm a man, and he did. Drone strike much, Barack? Harriet Pumpernickel, Clara to some people. She said in page 42 of The Church and the Negro, and men receive rewards based on their actions there, as they will receive rewards hereafter for deeds done in the body. The Negro evidently is receiving the rewards of he merits. There have been different groups sent to earth with other restrictions. It is not a matter of the Lord singling out one race and discriminating against them. The Lord does not discriminate again at all. President McKay explained, by the operation of some unwritten eternal law with which man is yet unfamiliar, spirits come through parentages for which they are worthy. Some as Bushmen of Australia, some as Solomon Islanders, and I'm not reading into it. They're saying they're the lowest. Some as Europeans or Asiatics, with all the varying degrees of mentality and spirituality manifest in parents of the different races. That's what they believed. The race into which one is born is not an arbitrary assignment, but what you did in the pre-existence. That's what they would have you believe, because they're a sick Freemason cult. So, I mean, you can look at it. Same thing. Did not know who had authority.
Public services fast,
Another
powerful
one of
electrically
these
driven
things?
vehicles actually set the pace for the traffic stream. All service, the world's most versatile
They're just
vehicle,
driving
at
on
the
the
flick of a
road. They're
switch,
not on
can
the
be
track.
transformed from a trolley coach to a gas-electric bus. Thus, on long routes running through several municipalities, the varying trolley line ordinances are easily met. The advantages of the trolley coach are provided wherever riding justifies the investment in overhead. Yet the same vehicle operating as a gas-electric bus will profitably serve areas of lighter traffic. Thus, the total investment in spare vehicles is reduced. Transit here was a drab necessity, used by those who had no other way to go. Today, the average daily patronage is 215,000, as contrasted
This is a small town, too.
with a daily average of 160,000 in
These buses are empty unless there's a baseball game in Chicago or these towns. But few towns still use these. Denver still has electric.
and approved by a landslide majority of 6-1, the company's plan to give trolley coach service. Producers of modern private transportation, they readily recognized modern public transportation. Trolley
And
coach
then what? Then Standard Oil said no, everything's going to switch to Greyhound and buses and diesel. They did have a plan.
Shreveport, a prosperous city of 85,000 in the center of the world's greatest oil-producing area. Black gold flows from the fabulous...
This was where they had that 100-mile raft, the Red River, the Atchafalaya, going to span the Mississippi. This is all part of the same thing.
East Texas, Rodessa, and Caddo pools nearby, and natural gas, too, is abundant. The Southwestern Gas and Electric Company uses gas in enormous quantities as fuel for generating the low-cost electricity which powers the drilling, pumping, and refining operations of the oil industry. And meet Mayor Caldwell on his way to the City Hall from his home in Shreveport's newest suburb. The mayor and his neighbor, Mr. N.B. Storr of the Shreveport Real Estate Board, are proud of the 150 new homes in this section, which 1 year ago, before the new electric coach line went in, was a country meadow. That is how home building, measure of a city's true prosperity, has been stimulated by modern electric rides.
What's modern?
Salesmanship
What's
that has
old?
actually made it fashionable.
These trolley buses, electric cars, electric buses, everything was working. Dual overhead wires, they're all gone now. All that's hiding. But all of this was white people. It was the law, and they show us this, and we never get to hear it. If we can go back. It doesn't take me long to go one, DRO, trop, rule, RULEST. No, I'm just kidding. They're even going to be vague. It was a legal racial classification in the 1900s that asserted that even a person or even one ancestor if you have traced one ancestor that had one drop of black blood, you're considered black. That was our legal principle in the United States. And it ended when? When did it start? When did it end? It was just prominent in the 1900s. Black people were legally, mandatorily discriminated against, but their lives mattered. I know that. It's not as much. To them, it was a caste system. It was worse than slavery. You're supposed to be free. We freed you, now you're not. But an example of hypodescent in societies that regard some races or ethnic groups of people as dominant or superior, hypodescent refers to the automatic assignment of children of a mixed union to the subordinate group. Well, that's better than killing them. Like the Mormons would have said, they deserve to die on the spot. Where? The early 20th century codified it. It was a concept. It was a legal principle, prominent. Now it's going like, well, some places it was outlawed in 1967. Okay, so wow. Black Lives Matter since 1967? I was already, way into the Apollo 9, Apollo 8, I was waiting for it. What was the one, Apollo 8 that went to the moon? Went to the moon, they said. And I believed them. And if you were a quadroon or a high yellow, it basically they were breeding white people for people to have sex with. And that's our country. And we can study history of trolley cars and everything. And wow, those are really interesting. The way that they work like that, the way they strung it up, and the way they don't use it anymore, except in some places. Ghent. Who wants a quiet, non-polluting bus when you go look at the antique architecture? So the Washington Naval Treaty, the Five-Power Treaty, they considered China and Japan white people. Well, Japan at least. China was going, why not? Why not me? We used to run the world for 5,000 years until you stole this heroin. We can do it again. No, you can't. Only Japan, United States, France, and Italy, along with the British Empire, can do it. So, I'm sure India was going like, what? Here we go again. Shit. They're going to get cannon fodder. All that racism going on, polygamy in the Mormon churches is going on when Germany renounces the Treaty of Versailles. We will not pay. We've got our own fiat money. Wow.
To the West and a strong Germany as a protector. Lots of books were written about this topic. See them linked in the description. Here's a quick overview by famous American lawyer Daniel Sheehan.
That in 1918, at the end of World War I, right, the Versailles Treaty is set up, and it turns out that the two grandchildren of John W. Foster, John Foster Dulles and Allen Dulles, both young lawyers at Sullivan and Cromwell, are brought with their uncle, Robert Lansing, Secretary of State, brings them to the Versailles Treaty agreements in Paris. They draft into the Versailles Treaty.
This is Operation PB Success, Operation Paperclip, Chiquita Bananas cutting people's hands off, Banana Republic. Yeah, Eisenhower and the Dulles brothers, those people. Now it's hooked up with the presidents of the United States?
The reparations requirements.
Yeah.
Imposing upon Germany a burden to repay the corporations for the damage they'd inflicted on any of their corporate properties during the war, right? And since they didn't have the funds to actually pay those reparations, what they did is Brown Brothers Harriman, the legal counsel for whom was Allen Dulles, they agreed to give loans to the German government to be able to pay the reparations, in exchange for which they took stock in their major war industries.
Yep.
The Krupp ball bearing factory, the IG Farben pharmaceutical and explosives companies, all those major industries. And then the investors in Brown Brothers Harriman actually invested money in their war industry.
Yep.
Okay, to rebuild their war machine at the end of World War I. They're the ones that rebuilt the entire German juggernaut under Hitler. And the CEO.
And the United States, is he going to say that, and since they demanded stock so they could loan them the money, that the United States made money off of every buildup of Germany before and during the war?
CEO of Brown Brothers Harriman, who had forwarded all these loans, the CEO of Brown Brothers Harriman is George Herbert Walker.
Oh my God.
You don't have to call him that, but it was close. But George Herbert Walker is the CEO of Brown Brothers Harriman. His son-in-law is Prescott Bush.
Yep, who becomes Hitler's financier.
And what happens is George Herbert Walker steps out in 1924 from the CEO position at Brown Brothers Harriman, creates the Union Bank of New York, and it's all capitalized by investors from Brown Brothers Harriman, who are all the major robber barons. You know, all those guys that owned, the Carnegie and Rockefeller and Harriman, the rail lines. They owned the agriculture.
And I hope that you're not getting overloaded. There's a couple, I hope you are getting overloaded.
Cultural lines, they owned the steel mills, they owned they had monopolized basically the top 15, 20 areas of the American economy. And they had all the funds, and what they did is they capitalized the Union Bank of New York. The Union Bank of New York sets up a subsidiary up in the Netherlands called the Bank of Shipping and Commerce. This guy, Fritz Thyssen, runs the bank for them, and they finance the construction of the international headquarters of the Third Reich. Okay, and they set up the entire Third Reich to become the bulwark against Bolshevism in Europe. That's their whole job.
Yes.
And that they
These commies are bad, though, right?
financed the whole rise of Hitler. In fact, in the meeting on January 3rd, 1933, when Adolf Hitler is made the Chancellor of Germany, sitting in the meeting is Allen Dulles.
Yep.
Legal counsel for Brown Brothers Harriman, and insisting that he sign an agreement being willing to accept the burden of paying the reparations agreement if he's going to be made the chancellor to protect those loans that they have given to them. And
This
Wow. You can't make this up. So what is the encomienda? Your teaching is not finished. It is only almost finished. It was was their Spanish system of hard labor. I don't know if it's that Bible thing. For labor, they're going to show you we can do it. Rewarded the conquerors. Sounds like, in the Bible, they could put people to forced labor. And there was a time when the Hebrews were in forced labor of the Philistines. Saul and Jonathan had a sword, but nobody else was allowed to. And even if you wanted to sharpen your plow, you had to go to the Philistines and ask permission and let them sharpen it. Because they knew you can't just let people have swords. It wasn't a matter of they're stupid, they didn't know how to make a sword. When you find a culture, it's like they got no swords, they must be stupid. Wrong. People took them over and they put them to forced labor. Hebrews and Philistines and others. In theory, conquerors provided the laborers with the benefit of not killing them, and that in giving them food, military protection, and education. It sounds like what, cradle to the grave, you just work and you'll be happy and you can breathe. In practice, the conquered were subject to conditions closely resembling instances of forced labor and slavery. The encomienda was first established in Spain following the Jesuit Reconquista. It was applied on a much larger scale during the Jesuits' colonization of the Americas when they were still claiming to be, they had to claim to be Christ because it was the golden age, but they were tares and they were showing it. So they had to go out and just say, be like, well, we're conquering these people because after the golden age, we found them and they have gone back to their bad ways. These giants were considered a monopoly on the labor of particular groups of indigenous people. It's hard to mine for gold and silver and to work all day picking crops. So, given instructions in how to be a Trinitarian, or they'll pull your skin off and burn you alive, and how to speak, which the Spanish language is probably close to the perfect language. Warring tribes and that Barbarossa, the Barbary Coast, 300 years of enslaving white people. Well, they had enough of that in 1812. So I thought you'd at least want to put a name on the face of Spanish hard later. Encomienda? Is that it? Encomienda? ¿Cómo se dice encomienda? So I guess they really did that smallpox study. Could you believe that? Can you believe me? Or you want to go study it yourself? There's accounts that, if you studied it, leaves trauma and distrust in Native communities that persist to this day because it's true. And, they deny it now, but they used it as a weapon. Zoonotic pathogens make up 58% of human infecting pathogens, according to a 2022 study, and they should know. Many of the most devastating diseases for indigenous people in the Americas originated with domestic animals. Oh, watch your chickens, because it's coming again. No, they knew it was coughing. It didn't take long to realize, this is how they're doing it with these blankets. The Ottawa tribe suffered an outbreak after receiving a gift from the French in Montreal with the injunction not to open the box until they arrived home. The box contained only other boxes and moldy particles. Yet, the most infamous intentionally spreading of smallpox was in 1763. And I imagine it's been gain of function since then. William Trent, fur trader at Fort Pitt, said, I tried to deal with these guys and they did not accept our terms. So he suggested, we give them the 2 blankets and a handkerchief out of the smallpox hospital. I hope it will have the desired effect. It's only one of many that are like that.
I alerted everyone, locally and internationally, to the fact that there was a conflict of interest.
Despite Bernard Dalberg's alerts, and despite the reassuring answers he received, no one at Merck ended relations with Laurence Serfati.
People in subsidiaries, in management, with huge responsibilities on their shoulders to launch new products with gigantic sales figures, well...
Yeah, you know what happens. They make it work.
Patent problem. Expiries, generics, development difficulties, prices that started shooting up. The big Western countries, the United States, didn't want to pay through the nose for drugs anymore. That's when Merck executives decided to cross the red line and cheat the system.
Bernard Dalberg uses the term red line deliberately. He's referring to a case dating back 10 years, the Vioxx lawsuit. It's one of the biggest drug scandals of the 20th century. Vioxx was a drug for arthritis, the chronic joint illness that affects millions of people. Merck presented Vioxx as a groundbreaking drug.
Vioxx was a super aspirin that was supposed to be groundbreaking in that, unlike other anti-inflammatories, it had fewer digestive side effects.
I think they're talking about Gardasil. Yeah. Thought it was with an O. This is one of those ones where first generation going to affect against a cancer and sexually transmitted diseases that cause cervical cancer, and they rushed this out. And it was not good. Mercury, thiomersal, live viruses, dead viruses, which cannot produce it. Vaccine had, it says it's mostly minor. This, I think, watching the videos I've seen, it was a disaster that they count as way to go, you guys, Let's see. Now they're monitoring events to see if there are patterns or more serious events that would be expected from chance alone. Let's just simply hop back to my algorithm. There's going to be something in here about fluoride, poisons in your water, in your food, in your history. Nothing jumping out at me. This one might be interesting. 4 months ago, I just saw that one. So I didn't get too much. Now let's see what I have pulled up in the Bible. So the name is the reputation. The name. I was looking this up. We'll have to get it from this Bible verse. Shimo. Call upon the name of the Lord. Call his name Wonderful, Counselor, Almighty God. And it's Shem. They say its phonetic spelling is shame. Who's ever heard that? Leave it to the Bible teachers, right? So Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 20. On that day, I will gather you together and bring you home again. I will give you a good name, a name of distinction among all the nations of the earth, as I restore your fortunes before their very eyes. So I wanted to know what that fame is. I will restore your fortunes. I will restore your fame. What do they have in there? I will make a name and a praise. Exodus chapter 4. Let's see what this one says. Meanwhile, the Lord had said to Aaron, go and meet Moses in the wilderness. So he went and met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. And Moses told everything the Lord had sent him to say and all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Then Moses and Aaron went and assembled all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron replayed everything the Lord had said to Moses. Aaron relayed it. And Moses performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord had attended to the Israelites and seen their affliction, they bowed and worshiped. So when it is time, God is going, it happens. Jethro, go in peace. So Moses at that time was 80 years old. 80 years old. And we have to stay strong. That Zipporah is mentioned 3 times in the Bible. So what I'm trying to say is that if you are a man living for God, even if you are pushing 80, and how old was Abraham when he remarried after Sarah passed? I mean, it's one of those things that there is a time and a place for everything. And if you're a man, you're going to like women. And you're not going to let people make you feel ashamed for that. But you're going to have to be careful, with it. Let's see what happened here. He said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us and watered the flock. He said to his daughters, where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son and named him Gershon. For I have been a foreigner in this land. And God remembered him, and he was going to have to go back, right? So it looks like in that was Exodus 2. Let's jump ahead to Exodus 4 and see, because this is something, if anybody has one of those ideas in the comments, I'd like to share, I'd like to hear what what you think. We'll pick it up in 21. And the Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you do before Pharaoh all the miracles that I have put in your power. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my firstborn. And I say to you, let my son go, that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, behold, I will kill you and your firstborn. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met him and sought to put him to death. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So he let him alone. So God did not kill him. It was then that she said, a bridegroom of blood, because of the circumcision. Now, I only want you to see that this is, he's 80. He's at least 80 years old now. And it would match the time of that when he met the women at the well, and Zipporah was given him to be a wife. Now, Gershon wasn't circumcised until that time. And it may or may not be a big deal, but I know that the people in the wilderness didn't circumcise their children. And they didn't, Joshua circumcised them and they waited till they healed, then they crossed over. But everybody that left Egypt into the wilderness that rebelled against God, they died on the way. The children's clothes didn't wear out, sandals didn't wear out, and they didn't get circumcised. So it's something to think about as we go about our day. We have the rest of our life to live today, Lord willing. It's a flat earth nation. Mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends are never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We know we're called, chosen, and adopted to have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame. Adios, amigo.